Welcome back, dear students, to another session of biology classes. Today we shall continue the chapter that is life processes. In the last part, we had seen how digestion takes place in humans. Today we are going to learn about the breathing or exchange of gases, also known as respiration in humans. We'll discuss the important questions from this part, and we shall then proceed into circulation and excretion. So we shall quickly begin, students. The first question that can be asked from this part is, what is breathing? In simple terms, breathing is exchange of gases between the organism and the environment. Or you can also write, breathing is a process in which oxygen is taken in and carbon dioxide gas is given out. That is all that you need to know. Coming to the next question is, what are alveoli? Write their function. Can be asked for 2 marks. Alveoli are balloon-like structures that are present in the terminal bronchiole of the lungs. Now, for those who are not very clear with this, what is terminal bronchiole? Quickly we'll recall the passage of air into the lungs. Air passes through the nostril, then it goes to the trachea. The trachea divides into 2 and it enters the lungs, called bronchi. Once the bronchi have entered the lungs, they will further divide into smaller branches, as you can see here, and these are called as bronchioles. The bronchioles further divide, students. They become primary bronchioles, dividing to give secondary bronchioles, dividing to give tertiary bronchioles. And finally, the last division of bronchioles is called as terminal bronchiole. Present attached to the terminal bronchiole are balloon-like structures, air sacs or balloon-like structures called as alveoli. Now the alveoli is the site of respiration, or it is the site where exchange of gases takes place. That is, the oxygen goes from the alveoli into the blood, and the carbon dioxide goes from the blood to the alveoli. So the exchange of gases takes place in the alveoli of lungs. Very important. Proceeding to the next topic from this chapter is fate of pyruvate. So we'll quickly see what is fate of pyruvate. When a question is asked, we should know something from digestion. Now we have seen the end product of digestion is glucose. When carbohydrates are eaten, it converts into glucose. What happens to this glucose once it enters the blood, students? It is found in the intestine. From the intestine, the glucose enters the blood. Now the glucose is a 6-carbon compound, C6H12O6. That is the formula of glucose. So we write down glucose, which is a 6-carbon compound. Now this 6-carbon compound gets converted into another molecule which is called as pyruvate. The pyruvate has only 3 carbon in it. The glucose is converted into pyruvate, which is a 3-carbon compound. Now this pyruvate has 3 options, students. It can undergo 3 different pathways based on the availability of oxygen. The 3 circumstances are, let us say there is no oxygen, that is lack of oxygen. Lack of oxygen. The second circumstance is there is oxygen but it is deficient. Deficiency of oxygen. And the third circumstance is there is plenty of oxygen available. So there is oxygen present. So we have 3 separate situations. So based on the availability of oxygen, we have 3 situations, students. The first situation, when there is lack of oxygen, what happens to pyruvate? The pyruvate gets converted into a compound called as ethanol. You must have studied this in your chemistry part. Ethanol, which is an alcohol. Very important, students. Ethanol is an alcohol, and this alcohol is produced when there is lack of oxygen. Does this happen in humans? No. We always have oxygen available for us, correct? But where does it happen? It takes place in yeast. You must have heard about preparation of wine. So for the preparation of, let us say, grape wine, we add yeast to the grape mixture, correct? This is because yeast will undergo this process and they will convert the pyruvate into ethanol, producing wine. Next situation is there is deficiency of oxygen. What happens to pyruvate? It gets converted into a compound which is called as lactic acid. Very important. Does it happen in humans? Yes. When does it happen? Whenever we have deficiency of oxygen, let us say we are exercising a lot, our body doesn't have enough exercise, and one day we start exercising suddenly. What happens? The body doesn't get enough oxygen. During that time, the pyruvate is converted into lactic acid. This lactic acid gets deposited in the muscles, students, and the muscle starts paining after some time, if you have noticed. This is because of the accumulation of lactic acid in the muscle. Why is it produced? Because the pyruvate is converted into lactic acid whenever there is a deficiency of oxygen. Coming to the third situation, what happens to pyruvate when we have plenty of oxygen, as it is happening in me and you right now at this moment? We have plenty of oxygen available. Pyruvate is converted into carbon dioxide, energy and water. The most important for us is the energy. Yes, the ultimate aim of respiration is production of energy, not to obtain oxygen. Oxygen is needed to combine with pyruvate to give energy. And the carbon dioxide that is produced here is given back into the environment. So this is the fate of pyruvate, students. Very important question, can be asked for 3 marks. Make sure you note this down and you practice it. We shall now proceed into the next concept. Now we are going to proceed with circulation, students. What are the important questions from this part? The question may be on the diagram of heart. You might be asked to label the few parts of heart. You might be asked to write the functions of different parts of heart. Very important. That is what we shall discuss now. Human circulatory system consists of a heart, that is the blood pumping machine or the blood pumping organ, I can say, of our body. The heart contains few blood vessels that we are going to look into. What is the structure of heart, students? The heart contains 4 chambers. In humans, we have a 4-chambered heart, the 2 atrium and the 2 ventricle. Very important, students. We have 2 atrium, auricle and the 2 ventricles. Present on the right side of the heart, that is marked in blue, we have the right atrium and the right ventricle. On the left side of the heart, we have the left atrium and the left ventricle. Once we know this, what are the blood vessels that are entering the heart? The first vessel that enters the heart is called as the vena cava. There are 2 vena cava, students, the upper one and the lower one. That is the superior vena cava and the inferior vena cava. The superior vena cava brings the deoxygenated blood from all the parts above the heart to the heart. I will repeat. The superior vena cava brings DOB. DOB is nothing but deoxygenated blood from all the parts that are present above the heart. Your brain, neck, all the regions from above the heart contain DOB, deoxygenated blood. This DOB is brought to the right atrium by the superior vena cava. The inferior vena cava also brings deoxygenated blood from all the parts below the heart, students. All the parts below the heart will contain DOB, which will be again brought to the right atrium by the inferior vena cava. Next, the DOB starts filling in the right atrium. From the right atrium, the DOB goes to the right ventricle. That is, first there will be filling up of the atrium. The atrium is going to expand, and then once it is filled, it will contract. When it contracts, the DOB is pushed into the ventricle. From the atrium, the blood is pushed into the ventricle. Next, the blood enters this vessel, which is called as the pulmonary artery. Now, the pulmonary artery, as the name itself indicates, pulmonary is something to do with lungs. The pulmonary artery goes to the lungs, students. So, you can see here, it is branching into two, meaning we have a pair of lungs. We have two lungs. So, this will enter the left lung and this is going to enter the right lung. The pulmonary artery carries DOB or deoxygenated blood from the right ventricle to the lungs. What happens in the lungs? So quickly we'll recall, the lungs contain bronchioles that are nothing but the small vessels of the bronchi, and the bronchioles contain balloon-like structures which are called as alveoli. If you remember, alveoli is the site of exchange of gases, correct? So, the DOB from the pulmonary artery enters the alveoli of lungs. Now, when we breathe in, the oxygen that enters into the alveoli is present here. Now, this oxygen goes from the alveoli to the blood. Here we have the blood. So, the oxygen goes from the alveoli to the blood. Same time, the DOB or the deoxygenated blood will have carbon dioxide gas. This carbon dioxide will go to the alveoli. I will repeat, oxygen goes from alveoli to the blood. Carbon dioxide goes from blood to the alveoli. Exchange of gases has taken place. What happens now? The blood is containing oxygen. So, we now call it as oxygenated blood or OB. Now, this oxygenated blood is brought back to the heart by these vessels called as pulmonary veins. The pulmonary veins will carry oxygenated blood from the lungs to the heart. Which part of the heart? To the left atrium. From the left atrium, the blood is going to enter into the left ventricle. When the atrium contracts, oxygenated blood is pushed into the ventricles. From the ventricles, the blood is going to the largest blood vessel in our body. Very important, students, that is the aorta. Aorta is the largest blood vessel in our body, and it is going to carry oxygenated blood to all the parts of your body. So, oxygenated blood will be carried to every part of the body, and the oxygen will be used up by the tissues. Maybe the brain, maybe kidneys, whatever organ needs oxygen will be using this oxygen. They will generate carbon dioxide. This carbon dioxide is going to mix with the blood. What is the blood now called as? Deoxygenated blood. The deoxygenated blood will be carried back to the right atrium by the superior and the inferior vena cava. From there, the DOB is going into the right atrium. From there to the right ventricle. The DOB enters the pulmonary artery, goes to the lungs. In the lungs, DOB becomes OB, oxygenated blood. Oxygenation of blood takes place, and the OB comes back to the left atrium because of the pulmonary veins. From the left atrium, the OB will enter the left ventricle. From the left ventricle, the OB enters the largest blood vessel, aorta. The cycle repeats. So, this is very important, students. We need to know the different blood vessels, their functions, and also about the oxygenated blood and deoxygenated blood, and how oxygenation happens in the alveoli. With that, we have seen the important questions from circulation. I might as well add a tiny note on the components of blood, just to be on the safer side. We should also know the components of blood and their functions. The components of blood. Blood is made up of two components, students. That is the solid component and the liquid component. The solid component of blood is called as formed elements. So we have solid and liquid. The solid components of blood are called as formed elements. Now, under solid component, we have three more components, that is the WBC, RBC and platelet. Under the liquid component, we have only one, that is plasma. The solid component of the blood, that is WBC, stands for white blood cell. As the name itself indicates, these cells are white in color. They do not have a particular color like RBC, which stands for red blood cell. What is the function of WBC? They are used against defense mechanism, students. They will provide immunity to the body. Very important. They are involved in immunity of the body. They act like policemen. In simple terms, if you want to understand, policemen. So whenever a foreign body, whenever a thief enters the body, the police will attack. WBCs will attack these foreign bodies. Coming to the second blood cell, that is RBC, red blood cell. Now the red blood cell is red in color because of the presence of a protein which is called as hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is a red color pigment that is present in the RBC. Hemoglobin carries oxygen, as you have seen about oxygenated and deoxygenated blood. So RBCs carry oxygen because they contain hemoglobin. Coming to the third component of blood, that is platelets. Platelets are involved in blood clotting. So if you have noticed, whenever there is a small cut on your finger, after a few seconds, the bleeding will stop by itself. This is because a clot or a net is formed around that wound. This is because of the platelets, which help in blood clotting, also known as coagulation of blood. Coming to the liquid component of blood, that is plasma. The plasma is a liquid. We understand when something is liquid, its main function in the body will be to transport materials. So the plasma transports materials like maybe proteins. So like albumin, you can just list few examples. Of course, it may not be mentioned, but you should know plasma helps in the transportation of substances. So these are the components of blood, students. Very important. Function of each component is also important. With that, we have completed the circulation part. Next, we'll proceed into the last part of the chapter, that is excretion. The next part of this chapter is excretion. Today, we shall see how excretion takes place in humans. Now, the first important question that comes from this topic is, what are the different parts of excretory system and their functions? Quickly, we'll familiarize ourselves with the parts. We have a pair of kidneys, bean-shaped organs. You have seen beans. So bean-shaped organs which are present on the either side of the vertebral column. Now the vertebral column is nothing but the backbone, students. So on the either side of the backbone, we have two kidneys. Attached to the kidneys are the pipes. These pipes are called as ureters. Now the ureters will carry a fluid from the kidney into the storage organ or a tank. Imagine it as a tank. So this tank is called as the bladder. And the tank will have a pipe which will have a tap at the bottom, correct? So we have a control tap here that we call it as the urethra. So these are the parts of excretory system. A pair of kidneys, pair of ureters, one urinary bladder and a urethra. What is the work of excretory system? In our body, our organs are working always and these are producing waste. We have three nitrogenous waste: ammonia, urea, uric acid. All the three are dangerous for our body and we are supposed to eliminate it from the body. So this happens in the excretory system. The waste that is found in the blood is filtered, it is cleared, and the pure blood is returned back to the body. While the waste, urea, uric acid and ammonia, mixes with water and it forms something called as urine. So kidneys are the site of urine formation. The urine formed by the kidneys will be carried to the storage region, that is the bladder, by the ureters. And once the bladder is full, the signal reaches the brain and we come to know we are supposed to use the washroom. The urine is eliminated from the urethra. Now, how does the kidney actually work? Very important. The structural and functional unit of kidney is nephron. Very important, students. We are now going to discuss about the functioning of nephron. Nephrons are the structural and functional unit of kidney. Present in the nephron are glomerulus. This part is called as glomerulus. The cup is called as Bowman's capsule. This convoluted region or the folded region is called as PCT, which stands for proximal convoluted tubule. This region is called as DCT. And finally, we have this pipe which is called as the collecting duct. This U-pinch structure is called as the Henle's loop. So these are the parts of nephron. We will begin with the Bowman's capsule. It is a cup-shaped structure. As you can see, it looks like a cup-shaped structure. Present inside the cup, you can see network of pipes here. This network of pipe is called as glomerulus. Now the glomerulus is the region where ultrafiltration of blood occurs. What is ultrafiltration? Every component of the blood is filtered in the glomerulus. I have told you there are three important nitrogenous waste, the waste, urea, uric acid, ammonia. These are separated from the blood here and the clean blood will go through this system, which we will not worry about it. We will go to the urine that is formed. After ultrafiltration in the glomerulus, the urine is passed to this system which is called as proximal convoluted tubule. In the proximal convoluted tubule, reabsorption happens, secretion happens, which we will not worry about. From there, the urine goes to the Henle's loop. Now, in the Henle's loop, concentration of urine takes place. What is concentration of urine? If you have noticed, during summer, when we sweat a lot, we lose lot of water through sweat. That time we produce less amount of urine. Whereas in winter, when we don't sweat, we use washroom lot of times. We produce large amount of urine during winter season. This is because during winter we will have lot of water in the body and it will go out in the form of urine. Whereas during summer, already we are losing water through sweat. We have less amount of water in the body. It can result in dehydration. That's why what do the kidneys do? They will remove the water from the urine so that less urine is formed and the water will go back to the body. So here concentration of urine takes place in the Henle's loop, students. Following the Henle's loop is another system of pipe which is called as the DCT, which is nothing but distal convoluted tubule. Now proximal means nearer, distal means far away. This is nearer, hence PCT. This is far away, hence DCT. All the nephrons will be connected to this major pipe which is called as the collecting duct. So the DCT from this everything will be connected to the collecting duct. The collecting duct will collect all the urine from the nephron and then it will pass it on to the ureter. The ureter will take it to the urinary bladder and from there the urine is eliminated out. So this is how the kidney works. Very important in this is the function of nephron, structural and functional unit, function of kidneys, and also the function of glomerulus where ultrafiltration takes place, and the three nitrogenous waste, urea, uric acid, ammonia. With that we shall end with the excretion and then proceed to the next part. With that we have finished all the life processes in humans. Now we shall move to plants. Now the important questions that are usually asked from the plant section are: first one, what is the function of xylem? You have already studied this. Xylem helps in the transportation of water. What is the function of phloem? Phloem helps in transportation of food. And lastly, the question they ask most of the times is, what is transpiration? Transpiration is a process by which plants lose water from the surface of leaves into the atmosphere. Very important, students. Just like how we sweat when we feel very hot, we sweat. Similarly, plants also lose water. This process is called as transpiration. Now, when we are talking about transpiration, very important question is, what is stomata and what are guard cells? Write their function. We shall quickly see what they are. Stomata. What are stomata? Stomata are tiny pores which are present on the surface of leaf. So when I take a plant, on the surface of the leaf of the plant, we have tiny pores. These pores are called as stomata. When we enlarge a stomata, it looks something like this. What is the function of stomata? It helps in the exchange of gases, carbon dioxide and oxygen. If you remember, in human beings, we have alveoli in the lungs which will help in exchange of gases. Similar work is done by stomata. It helps in the exchange of gases, students. It also helps in transpiration, very important. Now if you see the stomata, surrounding the stomata are bean-shaped cells. These bean-shaped cells are called as guard cells. Bean-shaped cells are called as guard cells. What is the function of guard cell? It will help in opening and closing of stomata. Very important. How do they work? When the water enters the guard cell will bulge like this and the stomata opens. When the water exits the guard cell will shrink, as you can see here, and the stomata has closed. So here the stomata is open and here it is closed because of the water entering and exiting the guard cell respectively. So we have covered every important question from this chapter, the most important ones that is, and I hope you have understood all these. I hope you have made points as usual, you have taken it down and you are well prepared for the exam. We shall end today's session here, students. Thank you so much. See you all in the next session. Take care and have a good day.